Hello students, today we are going to talk about the classification of matter, in which this is part 3rd, chapter number 1, matter in our surroundings, and this is the lecture of grade 9th. What are the classification of matter? We classify the matters in 3 parts. Among the first one is solid, the second is liquid, and third one is gases. So we know that what is solid, what is liquid, and what is gases. Here we starts from solid, and one by one we are going to talk about the properties of the solid. The first property of solid, that is, it has a fixed shape and fixed volume. Fixed shape and fixed volume. That means if we take an iron piece, so its shape not changed until we heated the iron piece. If the solids are at room temperature, then it will be it remains in that shape, and it has a fixed shape that cannot be changed until we heat it. And next, it has a fixed volume. Okay, so if we put some ice cubes in glass, then its shape would be not changed. Okay, and the most important thing is both are the properties, the shape and the volume, both are unchangeable in solids until we rise the temperature. Okay, next point is the solids cannot be compressed much. Cannot compressed much, because in solids the intermolecular spaces between the molecules of solids are negligible. We can say that there is no any spaces between the molecules of the solids, so it is rigid, hard, and uncompressible. And if we compress the solids, it compresses mostly less and very laced, so we can say that it cannot compressed much. But here some exception uh, present, in which among the first one is the rubber. If we stretched the rubber, it changes its shape, and if we press the rubber, it can changes its shape and it can compressed. Then why, if it is solid, then why is it compressed? Just because of force, due to force. If we apply some force and stretch the rubber, it can change its shape. But when and if we withdraw the force, then it remains and come back in its original shape. So it is also considered in solid. Due to force, it can change its shape. If we uh, disown the force and withdraw the forces, then it regain its original shape. So this is also solid. And one more is sponge. Sponge has present in a tiny pores in them, and it trapped a lot of air in it. So when we pressed the sponge, then the air present in the pores of that sponge expelled, that is expelled. And when we release the forces, then after some seconds, it uh, gained the air again. So we can say that sponge is also a solid. Just because of force, it can change its shape, nothing else. Next point is solids have high density. Solids have high density and they are very heavy because it in the solids it takes and it the amount of matter present in a unit volume are very much. So this is we called that solids have high density and it is very heavy. Next point is when we put solids in other container, the container do not fill completely. This is because it has minimal and negligible spaces between the molecules of the substance and solids. So it has a fixed shape, and if we take some ice cubes in some container, then it does not change its shape and remains the most of the spaces and container is empty and they do not fill their container completely. First of all, what is the meaning of this point that do not fill the container completely? This is so that if we take a beaker and if we put some iron cubes in it, iron rods in it, then we can see that this area is filled, but this area is not completely filled with the iron. So this is we call that the solids do not fill their container completely. So this is all about this topic. And next point is the solids do not flow just because of the intermolecular forces in the solids have highest and greatest. The intermolecular force are very much stronger, so it cannot flow because it has the strongest force present in the solids. So we can say that it do not flow. It do not flow because the intermolecular forces between the molecules of the solid are very bigger and very greater regarding to the liquids and gases. So this is the property of liquids. The next point is the liquid. What are the properties of liquid? Firstly, the liquids have fixed volume, but it has a unfixed shape and it has no any fixed shape. Fixed volume but no fixed shape because the intermolecular forces between the molecules of liquids are lesser than the solids. It can float and it can slide one another all and one over all. If have two layers of liquids just like this and just like this, it can float and it can slide one another over other. Okay, so it has no any fixed shape because first is intermolecular force and the second is intermolecular spaces. It has if we compare the liquids and the solid, the intermolecular spaces in liquids are little bit bigger and greater. Okay, so it has fixed volume because if we take 1 liter of water in a container and we put same liquid to the other container, its volume does not change. But if we put 1 liter of water in a glass and in another vessel and container, suppose in a balti, then we can say that it can take and it can change its shape to the glass to the balti, from the glass to the balti, and it so the shape of the liquids do not fixed. it can take the overall shape of a container that we put in it. Next is solids and liquids cannot be compressed much. As per the solid, the liquid also can't compressible, because the intermolecular spaces little bit bigger than the solids, but it do not have so much spaces between the molecules. Okay, so this can't compressible. We can't compress the water, we can't compress the oil, because these are liquids. So as per solids, the liquids cannot be compressible, because the intermolecular spaces, it is very much lesser but little bit bigger than the solids. If we compare the solids and the liquids, that intermolecular spaces little bit bigger in liquids. Next point is, if we talk about the density, it is moderate. If we compare the solid and if we compare the solids, liquids and gases, the density of liquid has moderate to high density, but lesser to the solids. It has lesser density, less density than solid, because solids is little bit more heavier than the liquids. Why? Because the density is all about the mass per unit volume, and in liquids the mass contained in a particular volume is lesser than the solids. So we can say that the density of liquids are less than the solids. Okay, the next point is, if we take a liquid in a container, then it cannot filled in that container. Just like the solids, if we take a beaker and if we put some water in it, then we can see that and we observe that some spaces are empty. That is, here some spaces must be empty until we fully filled the water in the container. If we half filled the container, then we can see that the most of the spaces in the container is empty. So we can say that the liquids do not fill their container completely, but it flows one another. It flows because solids and liquids, if we compare the solids and the liquids, the liquid has a tendency to flow, because the intermolecular forces in liquids are lesser than the solids. It can float one another. Okay, so we can say that it flows easily. Now, if we talk about the gases, so it has some properties, in which the first one is, it has no fixed shape and no fixed volume. Why? Just because of the intermolecular spaces are very much, and intermolecular forces present in the molecules of the gases are negligible. Hence, the particles of the gases move in any direction. So we can say that due to negligible intermolecular forces, it has no any fixed shape and volume. The next is, the gases can be compressible easily. We can compress the gases easily. If we put some gases in a container like this, and simply we can press by the help of a piston. If we put some gases in a container, and simply this is piston, and if we compress the gases, if we compress this gas, then it can reduce its volume. So we can say that the gases can be compressed easily. It has low density, low density. Why? Because in unit volume, the least amount of matter present in it, due to the less and negligible intermolecular forces, its density is very low. If we compare the gases, if we compare solids, liquid and gases, then the intermolecular forces in gases is negligible, least. So we can say that the density of gases is very low. And the next point is, gases filled their container completely. If we put some gases in a container like this, if it is a container and we put some gases in it, then the molecules of gases fill this container completely, because there is no any intermolecular forces. So it can move in any direction in the container. So it exerted the forces in the container. It exerted forces to the wall of the container. So we can say that the gases, it is also called the gaseous pressure. So we can say that gases filled their container completely and they can flow easily. We can easily feel the winds. It is also gases, the mixture of gases, and it will flow easily. So just because of it has a greater intermolecular spaces between them and negligible intermolecular forces, it can flow from any direction. So this is all about this lecture. I hope all things are very clear to you. In our next topic we will go ahead. Thank you.